Hey, Clay Schroff, and we are so excited about today's episode. We have guests that we've had on before, but we're bringing everyone back together, and we have a couple new guests that are going to happen over the next different sessions. But when you bring leaders together, leaders that are truly pillars in our community, you better buckle up, as Steve put it, because we're going to bring you information that can change your life. You know, when you have leaders that have truly made it in whatever that means, in a success in leadership positions, we want to glean from that. And then when you compile it, when you put it together, you know, when you take a penny and you put a penny and you take a penny, it all accumulates. Once you can take knowledge and accumulate more and more of it, it builds upon itself. And that's what we're going to do today. So me and my wife are sharing a mic because we have several guests here. I'm gonna have you guys rotate around and just tell us who you are, what you do, and then Michelle's gonna take back over. We'll start with Maria.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. Maria Guy. I am wife to Quint. I am mom to 2 kids. I am a leadership development, training, and consultant. I work primarily with folks in the construction, architectural, and engineering field to help them develop leaders.
So good. Byron.
Byron Samuels. I work for an organization called USAYO. I've been in Albuquerque area for 5 years this month. Outreach ministry, just wherever ministry is happening, we're trying to go and encourage people to keep doing what they're doing from a ministry standpoint. I do an awful lot of work with the Navajo Reservation on Pueblo and Zuni. And so, married 32 years, be June 6th, I better not forget that, Beverland, 2 kids, a 31-year-old daughter, she'll be 31 in August, and a 25-year-old son, Evan and Aaron, originally from North Carolina. That truck you sold me still runs well, and it's great to be here.
32 years, us too.
What day?
January.
January. Congrats.
Thank you very much.
You all are overachievers. Clay, Michelle, thanks for inviting me. My name is Steve Maestas. I'm in the commercial real estate industry. We develop primarily retail spaces that impact the landscape in the community here in New Mexico. Happily married for 21 years to my beautiful wife, Debbie. And we have a 10-year-old Addison that's really excited right now because school is out.
School is out.
Yes.
School is in, according to this podcast.
Right? That's right. Well, I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm going to start asking you guys some questions about leadership. The first, of course, Clay and I thought that knowing what defining moment in your leadership journey, could you just share with us when that moment happened of, yes, this is what I want to do?
That'd be you, Byron.
I'm looking at you, Byron.
Well, thanks for the question. The defining moment, when I graduated from UNC Asheville, and I was headed to graduate school at the University of Illinois, and I didn't quite make it. I went to Europe instead. Long story, so I just kept it really short. And upon coming back, I wanted to get back into graduate school, and an opportunity presented itself to become a graduate assistant. Now, while I was in college, I had 2 goals. One, I was either gonna continue on the education path, become a professor and teach, or my attitude was, if you can find a product to sell in America, you can make a lot of money. Coaching, getting into coaching gave me the best of both worlds. I was continually in education and you're constantly selling. So when I was a graduate assistant back in 1988, that's sort of when the doorbell or the bell rang for me, working with young people in an educational environment, although it was coaching, but you're constantly having to sell them on, yes, you can do this. You can make this move. You can be a good player. Trust what coaches are telling you. That's a sales thing. So you're constantly selling young people on a concept. And then as I became a head coach and assistant coach, Division I level, you're constantly selling boosters and donors. You're selling alumni, your administration. You've got to sell them on your vision. Obviously, players, parents, and coaches in an educational setting. And so for me, that encompassed everything from a leadership standpoint. I'm in education. I've got the responsibility of leading young people. And you know, I know the question will probably come up, leadership, what is leadership? For me, it's the ability to listen and follow. And so you can, you know, and Steve, I know, you'll know this because, Clay, you'll know this because in sales, you've got to ask qualifying questions to get the buyer where they need to be. In leadership, I think you've got to ask your employees or your students or whoever you're leading, your wife and your children, those same leadership questions. What do you want? Why do you want it? So that you can get a better understanding of how to help them get there.
Yeah.
If you know what they want, and so I think asking good questions and shutting up and listening and the ability to follow, I think in a lot of ways that defines leadership. It's not always what you say, it's kind of what you do.
How about you, Maria?
Boy, that was the first thing that I thought when you said, asked that question, Michelle, was elementary school. I remember being in the restroom, hearing some kids talking about a fight that they were going to start, and feeling compelled to stop it, to say, no, why are you doing this? Trying to bring peace between both sides, and the fight didn't happen. And this was elementary school. And I've always been very tall, taller than most of the kids in my class. So I think that lent me some kind of unspoken authority, and that helped. But I agree with what you're saying, Byron, and I think it's asking, it's listening, but ultimately leadership is influence. Are you able to influence the people that you're guiding, that you are leading towards a goal, towards not doing something in this case? And I think as a young person, I was a reluctant leader because I would rather sit back and see what the situation is. And if there's a leadership absence, that's when I step in, when it's like, okay, I can't stand this. Someone needs to take charge. As I've grown older, I've learned to be more proactive about that. But I think at first it was that, let me see who's in charge, how do I fit in type of situation, and can I contribute, can I add? But I think when self-awareness teaches us, I have a voice, I have a contribution to make, and I think it would be helpful, so you push through that discomfort and you contribute where you can and influence. And whether it's influencing your family, your kids, or influencing your team or your co-workers, it's the same thing, right? It is, am I leading us to a better outcome? So I think I learned to grow into that leadership space, but it's, when you're a kid, you're just trying to figure out, where you are, and so I think that's what came to mind first.
And I love that because it does go hand in hand with what you do today.
Yes.
And the way that you describe yourself is how I would describe Giant.
Yes, it's helping people develop the
It's like Cinderella, the shoe fit.
Absolutely, it really was a great fit when Giant is the organization that I work with. I use a lot of Giant content to work with my clients, and it's helping people understand what is my standard for leading people, and the standard can't change. It needs to be the same standard whether you're leading your kids or leading your team or your organization. And it simplifies things when you have a standard of who you want to be, how you want to show up, and constantly asking yourself, what's it like to be on the other side of me?
Yeah, and things to reach for.
Yes, absolutely.
That's for sure. How about you, Steve?
Michelle, I was thinking about the question, and early in my career when I was in sales, I had some mild success, and then I started my company. And what I realized was in order to grow the company, I had to become much more attractive, to be attractive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had to be able to have qualities and values and something to offer those that were interested
That's good.
in my organization. And I really didn't have those. And so there was this learning and this awareness that, I really have to get busy working on myself. And so over the years, that's just been like one of my secret sauces, is just continuing to work on myself. And certainly leadership is at the core of that. So, and it's something that it's continuous. It's not something that I think ever ends. So
I agree.
It's busy.
It's funny you say that, because I know for Clay and I, a defining moment was very similar. We were in a really difficult time in our life, and we just really felt like we were being called to do something. It was foster care. And we were wanting to ask people, we really wanted to change the landscape in New Mexico, because there is such a need for good foster parents, because there are so many children that are in foster care. Some staying in group homes. I mean, a lot of teenage kids aren't even in foster homes, they live in group homes, which are glorified orphanages, really. And I'll never forget looking at Clay and saying, we can't ask people to do something that we're not willing to do. And we can't lead someone somewhere we're not willing to go. So that's how our journey began with fostering children. Was we really felt strongly that we had to change the way we looked at giving children back into situations that we didn't necessarily agree with. So that had to change. We had to change our perspective of how we looked at biological parents, and that a lot of it was a cycle. And either we were going to come in and change the cycle, meaning we were going to have to touch and get to know parents. And it wasn't just about loving kids, it was about loving their family. So I feel that. I'm going to swing it there.
Hey, so what responsibilities do you as leaders feel you have to our community? The really cool thing is we got people in this room that are truly pouring into our community, so that should be pretty easy. And you guys can popcorn around, and let's start there. What responsibility do the leaders here in New Mexico and around the United States or the world have to the people who surround them, their communities and their families?
I tend to work primarily with one industry, and I have a passion for the construction world. That's where I spent 20 years of my career prior to being a consultant, which I'm in my 9th year of doing that. And I think if I can change the way they see themselves and the way they treat their employees and treat their families ultimately. In the beginning, when I started doing consulting, I think I was surprised by how it impacted people's families first. And I thought, oh goodness, they're paying me to help the team, but people are applying this to the relationship with their spouse. Now it doesn't surprise me, and in fact, it's part of the experience. If you really lean in, it will change the way you see everyone. And I think, wow, how many families are being impacted by their parents bringing back leadership principles or teaching them the same leadership principles. And it's a small way of impacting, but it's making a ripple effect, and hopefully those folks are sharing with others. But I know I work primarily with that group of people, but I hope there's a ripple effect. And even when those folks move on to another organization and they call me, it's like, I'm no longer with XYZ, I'm with so-and-so, and we're looking to have a workshop or to do some kind of work. I just think it keeps spreading in small ways, but if we can give people a shared vision for what it looks like to treat other people and to fight for their highest goods and to ultimately love those around you, it begins to shift. Sometimes it's hard to see what's happening in our society and in our city with crime, and there's so much division, but you can impact what you can impact and start there, and you can control who you're affecting there and being there for them, just like you guys do such an amazing job with the foster care world. But I think ultimately that's gonna have an effect where it's gonna impact our community.
If I could hit on a couple of things, because you mentioned you had to change yourself, and I think, and you mentioned it too. It's like, and I can't help but think about credibility. It's all about leadership is credibility. I mean, you can't if you're not going to go there, then how can you expect someone else to get there? And I bring that up because when I go out to the reservation, quite often, I hear, if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times in 5 years, and I'm not exaggerating, that people have always come out to the reservation, they say what they have to say, and then they leave, and we never hear from them again. Well, I go out there once or twice a week for 5 years now, or I go out as often as I can. And so people know who you are, they know what you're trying to do, and there's sometimes you just gotta go and be a ministry of presence. I'll give you one example. Broken Arrow Bible Ranch does an unbelievable job. They have 7 weeks of camp just south of Gallup. When I first got here, I'm excited, I'm a speaker, I wanna go out, I wanna be a part of the camp. Crickets, no treadway. I went back, nothing. Went back, I waited tables, I cleaned floors, I served that capacity, but it was just that ministry of presence. I think also, so that's one example. I've been blessed to be able to partner with the police department, community safety team, noticing they're trying to de-escalate situations, but what they really do is they notice people where other people just don't notice them. And to me, that's leadership. I mean, that's leadership. It could be someone that's sleeping in their car in a parking lot with emergence, like this person's been here for 2 weeks, we want them gone. Well, we don't want to escalate the situation, we want to help this person. So I think they're doing an amazing work. So shout out to the Albuquerque Community Safety Team. That's leadership is showing up. And then I think we have to be careful. I love Albuquerque. I love this Four Corners area, and I travel quite a bit. And I turn on the local news, and I could be in Missouri or Arkansas or even my home state of North Carolina. So, and you turn on the local news, what are the first 5 stories? Crime. Everybody wants to. So, and people talk about crime as if that's all there is to talk about. There's not. There's a lot of good things going on. And so I think the things that we talk about, if we talk about crime and division, blah, 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 then that's all people are going to think that's happening. That's why this podcast is so good, because we're talking about what's good going on in our community. And if we don't talk about the good, then the world ain't going to talk about the good, because they're thriving on what's bad and what's negative. And so I think all of those things are why I'm proud to be here. And so sorry for taking too much time there, but just the credibility piece. You know, what Zig Ziglar used to say when he was trying to become a motivational speaker, and he was really, really overweight. And it says, how can I tell someone you can be all you can be, and I'm standing up here and I'm 50 pounds overweight? He says, I got to do something. So, do you really believe that, Zig? Do you really believe you can be what you want to be? You know, but he lost the weight.
One of the things you said though is showing up.
Yeah.
Right? You showed up, you were willing to do tables, you were willing to mop floors, and it's really funny when you're willing to show up, what it does to the people around you. Because you show up enough, other people start showing up. But you gotta show up. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think you're building trust with that community.
There you go, right
That's
there.
Right?
That's the word.
In Giant, we talk about you build trust through character, chemistry, competence, and credibility. And you keep showing up because it's a human need to be heard, valued, and appreciated. And when you demonstrate that consistently, it's not a one time or a couple of times, people begin to trust you, they open up, and now you can really make an impact. So,
That's right.
well done.
You know, we have Compassion Vacations, which is a sponsor of this podcast, by the way. And we go into communities and bring people on a /vacation with a purpose. But the fact of that is that we only team with people who are showing up on a daily basis. That they're showing up so that when we leave, we didn't just take pictures with the locals and what we do is we go to serve the people who are serving. And the reason we do that is because if you go and you show up and then you're no longer there, then the God that we serve is like Santa Claus once a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really important to us as a ministry and as a business that we team with people and lift them up and build that foundation of people who are showing up. So thanks for that.
Mm-hmm.
So Clay, on that question, metaphorically, I think about the Dead Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So the Dead Sea receives water. It has a source of life coming in, and it does not have an outlet. There's nothing leaving the Dead Sea, so it doesn't give anything back to the environment, and thus everything in the Dead Sea is dead, right? And I think leadership in relationship to your question about the community is very analogous to that. I think that if you are successful, whatever that means to an individual, you have an opportunity, and I would actually say a responsibility, to reinvest in the community that supported your growth and supported your success. I'm very clear that my success, it has nothing really to do with monetary value. It has everything to do because God wanted me to be successful so that I would have influence in certain ways and I could do things that maybe if I wasn't successful, I wouldn't have that same influence, that same opportunity. And I think understanding why you're successful and why you are doing something within the community is very relational. I think they're the same thing, because how are you successful if you're not within your community doing something to enhance your community? If it's only about you, then you go back to the Dead Sea analogy. You're just taking, but you really don't have life. And I would say I would bet every one of you gets a lot of fulfillment out of leading people, out of helping people, out of making a difference. Those are things that will withstand time and will be here when you're not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually a really unique opportunity to be able to lead people.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
If I could, I would up you one and say, I bet the three of us don't even think about if we're making a difference or not. We're just going.
Yeah, and I think it's
You know
it's
what
kind
I'm
of in your DNA.
Yeah.
It's just part of who you are.
Yeah, and I think it takes a level of humility, Steve, to recognize that it wasn't your amazing ability, but a blessing and your conduit.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that and saying, I'm not supposed to hoard this and become the Dead Sea. I'm supposed to divert and bless and help. So somewhere along the line, God said, I can trust Steve with more.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because he knows what to do with it. And so it's easy to give you more and bless with you more because you know how to disperse. You're not going to keep it. And I just think that is it's amazing to be a conduit. I think the people that operate in that way live the happiest lives.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, that's what I love about you guys, is that I love that we're sitting here talking about leadership and you think we were talking about bank accounts and how we can be more successful in this world, and it ultimately comes back to generosity. It comes back to we're entrusted with something and we're giving it to someone else, whether we're profiting from it or not. And that's something that I absolutely love about Clay. If I can brag on my husband for a minute, Clay has there's something in him that he does not feel like he serves a purpose unless he is helping someone. Like wherever we go, whatever we're doing, Clay always finds someone to encourage, whether he sees a 85-year-old man with a Vietnam hat, from being in the military. He goes and thanks them for serving, and, he talks to the janitor, and he's just, even if it's words of encouragement, and just to see people go, what do you mean thank you? And, they're just really surprised that someone would take 5 seconds out of their day to thank them. And I love that about Clay, and I believe that really and truly gives him a platform. It really does, just being generous with encouragement and willing to do anything for anyone. And I think about, him being in sales for so long, and he was a car salesman, and what do you think about a car salesman? I mean, they're up there with lawyers, right?
Not mine.
Right? You know what I mean? So when you think of a car salesman, I mean, Clay is like, when you think of a car salesman, I just think God knew where to put Clay to meet people that, first of all, don't think much of car salesmen, but to be with other car salesmen and to be able to make an impact in that world and to step into. And there are so many times that I would, call him at work and just say, hey, what's your ETA? And he'd go, well, I'm out in the lot praying with this guy, or this guy just came to the Lord. We were in the back lot, and he just got out of jail, and I'm like, take your time, take your time. And it wasn't because he was selling a car, or it was truly, that's what he would devote a lot of his time to. And I really believe that is why he was so blessed doing what he did and able to do what he does now. So very proud wife over here.
We always have a mission field, don't we?
That's right.
No matter where we are.
That's right.
It's recognizing it.
Yeah, and I remember one time a gentleman told Clay, who was also in the car business at one point in his life, and he said, you can't be a Christian and a car salesman. And Clay was like, what do you mean? Of course you can. And he's like, no, because as car salesman's a liar. Like, how could, and I just, it makes me go over, and I'm like, no, that's not what it means. It means that car salesmen need Jesus too. That's like,
And they need to eat.
that's right. So I just love that we have the three of you guys here, and we end up in this place of how are we giving back to this community, and the way in which we do it is because we've been entrusted with so much.
So if you were going to talk to the younger you, say we
last
went
year.
back 20 years or longer, what would you say to yourself?
I would say to myself, to stop being so task focused and be more relationship focused. Because I'm wired to get things done and cross them off the list, and there are times where that feels like that is the most important thing, and you can just wait over here until I'm done, and just knowing that true influence isn't developed until you have a relationship with someone, true long-lasting impact. But I think sometimes in the flurry of trying to get my stuff done, I probably did not make time for people as much as I should have, and it's a lesson I've learned. But I would tell younger me, make time for that. It is actually the most important thing that you'll do.
So good.
Love that.
Yeah, I would, I have a long list, Clay, but if I had to condense it, I would take more chances, I'd be more courageous, and I'd build more relationships.
That's really good.
So 20 years? I might need to go back 30.
30.
I think I was good on the relationship part. I would be a better listener. I'd be a better listener. Coaching sometimes, I became a Division I head coach at 30 years old. Cocky, brass, thought I knew it all. And I think I did listen, but I kind of, part of me had a my way or the highway kind of, and it worked in some situations, but it just didn't work enough.
How would that change you today?
how it, my way or the highway,
No.
just being a better listener.
You went back and you told yourself, Byron, you need to be a better listener. Trust me, in the future. What would that have changed in your direction in your life?
Yeah, see, I'm not upset, and I know you're not asking the question the way. I'm right where I need to be for this season in my life. And it's because I might have been a poor listener 30 years ago. I'm right where God wants me. Maria mentioned, God trusted Stephen with more because his heart was to give. And so I think what I went through professionally as a coach is to prepare me for ministry. And I use my talents as a teacher and as a coach to do ministry. So I don't know that I would change a thing, but I would have been a better listener. Now, I probably would have made a different mistake, in hindsight, but I'm right where I need to be.
That's good.
I'm right where I need to be. If I can just piggyback on something, you talk about Clay and embracing the veterans and the homeless people and people that he meets, strangers. I grew up in the South. I grew up in North Carolina, and there was a time where it was, good morning, and how are you? And everybody would walk, you could walk by 100 different strangers, and every person would say good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, or how are you? Great day. We've lost that. We've lost that. Not only in the South, we've lost it generally. And I say, I was talking to a dentist the other day, and they talked about your smile can make a difference in someone's life. You acknowledging another person can make a difference in their life, can make a difference in their day. You just saying good morning or how are you acknowledges them. And maybe that person's having a bad day or have had a bad night. And now instead of going home and drinking, they may go home and say, that guy said good morning.
Yeah.
Made me feel good. Or maybe that mother that's stressed out with 3 kids and no help, maybe instead of doing something because you acknowledged her in the supermarket just by saying good morning. I know it's a little thing, but if we don't get back to that, just acknowledging people, and I know we live in a different time and people, you could look at people the wrong way and something could go down, I get it. But
it kind of goes back to what you were saying as far as, knowing the right questions and the qualifying things. And I think that in leadership, first of all, we got to know ourselves to lead ourselves,
Exactly right.
Has she been listening to the tapes?
Sorry, but it's something that, we're trying to teach our children even, and you know what, we can be the change that we want to see in the world. We can be that, like you were saying, in the South, this is what we do. Well, keep doing it. Don't stop doing it. And I think that it's a responsibility. I love that, because I think of leadership and I think of, leading the community and, well, how are we balancing that with our families? How are we balancing our personal lives in leadership? Because it is hard to change gears and not go home and, lead those kids the way you want to lead, the folks at work. And I think that finding that balance and being able to, like you were saying, hey, how are we going to continue to notice and see people? Those are just basic needs that we're missing in this world right now. And I think that that's probably why you all are sitting at this table, is you guys haven't forgotten those things. Steve walks in, picks up on the conversation immediately. He's going to bring cake and ice cream. I love it. I love how we're like old friends in here, I don't think you know anyone in here, do you?
I do not. Well, you do.
Right, but I just love it. I love that leadership breeds that relationship, and that's why we have you guys here. It's not just about leading the community or you guys lead well in your homes, you guys lead well in your churches, and we see it and we love it and we want more of it, and we want to share it with our listeners because we know the difference that you guys have made in our lives. And Clay and I talk about it all the time. We're like, how do we know these people? Like, we're so blessed. Like, we're just, I don't know, I'm just some, poor girl from LA and he's this country boy from Montana, and we joke about it all the time. And we're just so blessed by the people that God has placed in our lives and the things we learn from each of you. And we want you guys to know that you have made a difference in our lives, and we know that you will in the lives of the listeners.
By the way, she leads our house, she leads our family. Do not let her say she doesn't.
No.
She readjusts me all the time. She goes, "Are you wearing that?" And that's just the small lead, let alone the big life decisions where she goes, "Let's think that through." So what do you think the number one need is in leadership in America? So, you know, we now have a generation that is growing up with the computer, and they're not touching each other. They're not face to face. Reading has gone down significantly. If you were to take your leadership skills, and this, you could write a whole book on this, so try to surgically narrow it down for me. But if you were going to change or input your leadership, which you have inside you, which all three of you have amazing leadership skills, and you were going to put it into our culture and into the next generation growing up, what would it be? We'll start with Steve.
Well, before I answer that, just to piggyback off of the last comment, I think every intelligent man recognizes that the better half makes the man. I had a mentor once tell me that once I got married, I will become much more successful and better at business, and that has absolutely been my experience. My spouse has made me a much better human being. I think the number one thing that challenges our society today is the breakdown of the family unit. And so I would give young people a little formula to follow, because there's a lot of young people that don't have exposure, don't have access, don't have support to have a reasonably good shot at, we'll call that success, that path. And so I tell this to a lot of young people. I have an acronym, it's called GMED, G-M-E-D. And I think that if a young person can follow this formula over a long period of time, things will change for them. It was my experience. This is what happened to me. And so the formula, GMED, G stands for goals. So you have goals, they're written down, they're specific, they're measurable. M is mentor. You have to have mentors in your life. That's a big one, particularly with the breakdown of family unit. And you can have mentors that are spiritual, you can have mentors that are business, that are health related, that are financial. They can be in all areas of life. Some of my mentors, a few of them I've never met before. Most of them have had the opportunity now to meet them. But you can there's so much knowledge and availability of resources in terms of knowledge resources that's out there. So mentors would be a big one. E is education. I was taught if I took 3% of my income and I reinvested it in myself on an annual basis, I would never go for want. And I started doing that when I was in my early 20s, and it's absolutely paid dividends. And I haven't been able to do it every year now that I'm older, but I still consistently reading books, consistently watching webinars, consistently going to seminars, consistently learning. So I think that educational piece, and I think what we teach teach young people in school is not what I'm talking about in terms of education. I'm talking about life skills, more so than the traditional curriculum, which I recognize has a place. And then D is something that I think if you just do this one thing, things will change for you, and that's having daily disciplines. So I remember when my daughter was a couple years old, we were teaching her every day you have to brush your teeth. Well, now that she's 10, she's figured that out, right? She figured it out when she was 3 or whatever. but we had a teacher to do that. And so that became a daily discipline for her. Well, taking that to other things that are much more relevant, like reading in the morning, what you eat, exercising, praying, all of these things, in each of the different verticals of life, if you have solid daily disciplines and you can perform at 90%, you don't have to do it every day, but perform at 90%, it'll change your life. Small changes over long periods of time have a huge impact on someone's life. And I think, our immediate gratification society sees the startup tech company, immediate billionaire and all this kind of stuff. And so it's really easy to fall into quick, how do I quickly get to that place of success? But if you just stick with your daily disciplines and you continue to work on yourself, the accretive incremental process will pay larger dividends than if you try and hit the ball out of the park and into the cheap seats.
So good.
I think Steve wins. We should just go with Steve's answer for all of
Oh no, I
this.
just
This
stole
is-
that.
this
I don't
is
have a mic,
awesome.
but I stole it. I'm putting it in a book.
No, I love it. I think you created a structure, right, with that acronym, and boy, you've covered relationship, you've covered learning, you've covered discipline, and having something to shoot for. I think those things are missing from, our society right now, where people see other people be successful in ways that maybe are unconventional, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with some of these ways, but you ask kids, what do you want to be? They want to be an influencer, or they want to be a TikTok star, or they want to, so the answers to what do you want to be when you grow up are very different now, and some people will be able to accomplish that, but what does it look like long-term to maintain these relationships, to have these mentors, right? To continue to become a lifelong learner and not just this thing that I did when I was a kid, or what, I don't know. There's different paths. People are gonna choose different paths, but I think just having this framework that you described, Steve, which I love, is you can apply so many things and make a life for yourself if you create some kind of structure for yourself. So I think that's a great tool to use to encourage people to grow and do good and to serve others, right? What we were talking about earlier, not just being the Dead Sea, but being that conduit. And I think that's a different mentality. We want our kids to do well, we want them to grow up and be productive citizens, but also teaching that not just so that you can have more, but so that you can continue to serve. That's a different mentality. So I would just add that. How can you give in addition to, because you've created this success for yourself?
So it's no coincidence, I don't believe in them anyway, that you said give, because the first thing that came to my mind when you asked the question was, find a way to be a giver and not a taker. That's the point I want to encourage young people. If we're ever talking to my son about, son, be a giver, don't be a taker. Be a giver, don't be a taker. So that's one thing that immediately came to mind. I'll get to my acronym. I have an acronym as well, so I apologize. But as I'm thinking about young people, and I say this a lot, and sometimes us older folks don't always like what I'm going to say here. So we're worried about young people, but we produce this fruit. And so adults, we've got to look ourselves in the eye. This is the fruit that we produce. And so we've got to help them unlearn some things that we've allowed to happen. And that's, you can tell the fruit, you can tell the tree by the fruit it produces. We produce some of this fruit, good and not so good. So
That's a great point.
and then I think the church has got to, the church was once the place for charitable giving in every single way. And I think most churches do it in some form, but I think the church has got to view, that the community's got to view the church as the place to go, and not necessarily, I don't even want to use this word, a big institution. I'm gonna just say it that way, but the church.
You know, just a real quick point on that is that we don't supposed to go to church, we're supposed to be the church.
We're supposed to be the church. Amen. Amen. So Maria said some things in the earlier, and I'm like, I started to shout. You were really bringing home a sermon early and some things, and I was like, well, I'm like, we got a song, we got a choir going, and so, but my acronym is this. I started a nonprofit years ago in Tampa, Florida. Here's the acronym. This is the biggest thing. It was called Think Ahead. Think Ahead. To think, this is a big thing. We've got to get young people to learn how to think and to reason and discern on their own what's good and what's pleasing, what is right and what is wrong. And not let a superstar or athlete or an influencer, I'll go way back, McDonough or Jordan or those, they can't make decisions for us. The life that they're living, we've got to think outside of them because that's not us. So we've got to learn, kids have got to learn how to think and reason and discern on their own. But what are they thinking about? Here's the acronym. Think attitude. Think ahead. Think attitude. Make yours a good attitude. That's the one thing we can control. Think hard work. Hard work is a good thing, but there's an attitude out there like, that's hard work. No, hard work is a good thing. It built the greatest country in the world. Hard work is a good thing, and it makes good things happen. E is education, to develop a lifelong love of learning. And Steve mentioned that he has a lifelong love of learning now. The A, think accountability. You are responsible for your successes and your failures, not other people. Quit pointing the finger. Now, we all need other people to succeed, but oftentimes failure, I put it this way, most of my failures I did on my own. And I've got to look at myself, And so think accountability. I'm going to be accountable. I'm going to be responsible for the things that I do and say that lead to or take me further away from my goals. And then the last thing is determination. Think determination. Just have a relentless pursuit of your goals, your dreams, and your aspirations. And that was the core of the nonprofit. It's basically a mentoring program for 7th and 8th grade kids in the Florida area that started some time ago. So that's where I would go with my acronym. So
we're running a little short on time. So this is at the end of every day when we do mission work. So we go out into the communities and we do the hard things. And one of the things that when we come back, we gather like this and we talk about today's events and then what tomorrow is going to bring. But we always end it with, I need a word. And it doesn't have to be with this. So I want you guys to dig deep. And you don't even have to explain your word, you can. But if you were going to give me just a word to carry through the rest of this year, one word, what would that be?
Decisions.
Decisions.
try.
Try.
Humility.
Humility.
Intentionality.
I always hate to cut this short. There's a part of me that what I want to do is just bring in team 2 and just huddle up again and just keep moving. I want to thank you guys for the time and what you do for our community. This is just the peak. Our listeners need to know that we haven't even, this is peeling back the first layer, and there is so much more, and we're just so thankful. I want to say thank you, like my wife did, for just being a part of my life and helping us to move forward and navigate through it. And what a privilege to be surrounded. They say you can tell who a person is by the friends they surround themselves with. and it would make me a king. So thank you.
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you very much.
Now, where's that sugar and cake?
I'm glad I got that in there.
That's
No,
a great
that
way
was
to end.
cake.